An incredible turnout. It's great to see everybody here. From Capital Factory, and I'm really excited to welcome you all here. Who's here at Capital Factory for the first time? Bunch of you, awesome. Well, welcome. Glad you could come. This is Capital Factory. We have 4 floors in this building, about 80,000 square feet, where thousands of entrepreneurs work, and we are the center of gravity for entrepreneurs in Texas. And for that, that's really about being a connector and being able to connect together the startups with the investors and then the big companies. And in our world, the Army and the DoD are really actually like a big company. They're a potential big customer to the startups, and that's what's exciting about it. And this is a place where people come to go start their businesses, and they can work here, they can find mentors to help them, and then we invest in companies too. We're actually the most active early stage investor in Texas for the past couple of years. And in the past 6 months, in particular, about 2 years ago, I met Zach Walker when DIU came here, and Ash Carter first set up that first DIU office here, and that was the first time where we really started to do anything around defense innovation at Capital Factory. Although Joseph Kopser had been bringing events and putting on events and banging the drum about it for I think a few years before that. And we've really seen it grow since then. And then we now have AFWorks around the corner, and I see a bunch of people from AFWorks here as well. And then about 6 months ago, the volume got turned up to 11 when Army Futures Command came. And now it's just like all DoD all the time. Oh, yeah, not all the time, but it's a lot of the time. And that's been really amazing and fascinating to see. And I've seen this whole room filled full of the Texas military department in all uniforms and other things like that. That's really exciting. So we're really glad to be part of that. Glad you can be all here. You could all be here today. We've got, I know, a really awesome program that Zach's put together. And I'm going to introduce Zach Walker. Zach is the lead for DIU, the Defense Innovation Unit here in Austin. He's been with us for about 2 years. He lives here in Austin. We get to see him most of the time when he's not running back to MIT for his master's program that he's working on. But he is leading the efforts down here and really helping to catalyze the defense innovation community. And it's been awesome to have him being part of it. And his leadership's really helping bring all this together. So I'm going to invite Zach up, and he's got the panel for today. And I'm just really awesome to see such a huge turnout. We love seeing this room full. So come on up, Zach.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Josh, and to all of you for coming today, and for those of you that are on the live stream. So for the Defense Innovation Unit, we have been in Austin for just a little bit over 2 years, and our mission is to accelerate commercial technology for national security. It's to lower the barrier to entry for startups and other non-traditional companies so that they can work with the Department of Defense and solve some of our most challenging national security problems. So for me, I enlisted in the Army National Guard. I know lots of Army in this room after 9/11 because I wanted to do something. And what's been so remarkable about being here for 2 years is that I've met so many people. And no matter if they've ever been in the military or if they're a veteran or whatever it is, they want to do something. And through organizations like DIU, AFWorks, Army Futures Command, all these other things that have been happening of late to try to connect the DoD to startups and entrepreneurs, this is a way for all of us to do something and work together to promote national security and a safer America and her allies. To that end, we are extremely excited to have COO from Uptake here today. But first, I would like to introduce an organization called the Texas Defense Innovation Forum. TDIF is a nonprofit, much like the mission of DIU, is trying to connect entrepreneurs with the defense ecosystem. And I'll turn it over to Chris Danesky, Kevin Lentroop, and Brandon Conover to speak a bit about that.
Wow. Okay. Hey, thank you for having us. Appreciate Josh, Zach. It's great to be here at Capital Factory on this side. I've been in a lot of these events. The reason we brought TDIF together was that we really saw a gap with understanding of how to work with the DoD. A lot of the bigs, a lot of the large defense contractors really have a leg up knowing their relationships and all the different cross-functional teams and their habitual relationships. But the small businesses, the startups, really don't even have a context on how they might be able to work with the DoD. So we thought we'd have an organization that helps educate the community, brings in guest speakers on topics of interest that would be something that get their ideas flowing. And that's the whole reason that AFC came here, was to look at a different perspective. If I looked at a problem, I'm going to look at it the exact same way as guys from AFC, because after 27 years, I've been indoctrinated, and that's the way I'm going to look at it. We want new perspectives, new folks, new ideas, and we're trying to help provide a context on that. I've got my co-founders here, and I'm going to ask them to come forward and talk about what we have with our mission and values. Kevin.
Howdy, everybody. My name's Kevin Landry. Sorry, my voice is a little raspy as a result of the cedar and the cold and a lot of conversations with a lot of really cool people here, which is cool. So I'm not going to read the mission because when I left the Army, I swore that I would never, ever again read anything on a slide. But y'all are the reason why we did this, because we saw a gap in the innovation ecosystem. So Josh and Joseph Costa before him did a really, really great job of building an amazingly well-connected innovation ecosystem here in Austin, but it lacks certain components that are necessary to do business with the DoD. And so we wanted to make sure that those elements were brought in, as well as the companies that that have a role to play in the defense innovation enterprise, but don't necessarily know where they fit. And as a result, we've gotten a lot of folks coming in from outside of Texas for this event, and that's something that I'm really proud of. The asks that we have for the community are a couple of things. One is we want y'all to keep coming to events, keep being involved, keep handing out business cards and connecting, because the connectedness of the ecosystem is really what's going to make this modernization experiment work. The second thing is we want you to go to our website and sign up. Don't go today, because the guy who's actually building our website is somewhere in this room and he hasn't finished it yet. And the third thing that we need, and we're going to ask some of you guys for, so please don't throw a beer in my face when I do, is we need a little bit of money. And so we're going to ask some folks to sign up for sponsorships, sign up as members, and to help us sponsor some events so we can keep the connection going for the system. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. The key word tonight has really been ecosystem. And as we think about how to work together, for many of us in a new industry, which is defense, right? How do we do that? Who do we talk to? Where do we go first? And so that's what we're really trying to help build, is that defense ecosystem here in the heart of Texas in Austin. So let's do a little audience participation to get an idea of who's here, because that's one of the key things of an ecosystem, right, is communication, talking to each other. So how many folks in the audience are veterans? Where are our veterans tonight? All right. And how many folks would say they already work in the defense space in some capacity? All right, pretty good. How about representing, owning a small business? Are these all the same people? All right, where are our large businesses? Okay, now we got some different hands going up. And then let's include, how about venture capitalists, investment bankers, folks that are investing in ideas? Oh, brave to raise your hands. Now you know who to go to. And the other point we want to make tonight is, while we are the Texas Defense Innovation Forum, an ecosystem is more than just geography. And we've got a lot of folks here tonight who are representing spaces outside of Texas. Maybe your businesses have expanded outside of the Austin area. Maybe you started outside of Austin and have come in. So let's get an idea of who's out of state. Who's here tonight from not Texas? That's a pretty good show of hands. So I actually cheated a little bit and invited several people in from North Carolina. So I actually live in Raleigh-Durham area of North Carolina. And oh, all right. Wolfpack? Go Pack? Good enough. All right. So I'm going to call out a couple people just so you all can get an idea of how this ecosystem is already expanding outside of Austin. So back in the back, we've got Dr. Stephen Lee from the Army Research Office. Stephen, introduce yourself real quick.
Thank you, Brandon. I'm the Chief Scientist at the U.S. Army Research Office. We fund basic research in academia primarily, but we're interested in transitioning that research to small businesses. So we do heavily engage and reach out. You can even email me through Brandon, and I answer every email and try to get you to the right place in the Army that should be interested in what you're doing. I think that's fair, and I'm really glad to see the CDIF kicking off here, and I think it's a good time, a good chance to get together and learn about the community as a whole.
Thank you, Stephen. That was perfect. Checks in the mail. Call out just a couple more people for coming so far. How about Denny? See you there.
Hey, good evening. My name is Denny Lewis. I'm with the North Carolina Defense Technology Transition Office. Our job is to connect our innovation ecosystem with warfighter needs.
Thank you, Denny. And last but not least, representing a small business, Richard.
Richard Spangler with Plaza Bridge Group. I'm a board member on the North Carolina Defense Business Association. With an association in North Carolina that pulls together small companies and educate them on defense issues.
Thank you all. So that was just to give you a little taste that the ecosystem is already expanding beyond our local geography. So thank you all for making the trip down. You want to talk about events?
Yeah, great. Hey, one other piece of the ecosystem, let me see, Aquila over there. They're one of our founding members, true believers. Actually, they're technology agnostic. They're Austin experts. So as new folks come in, if they need space to work, they can help them figure that stuff out. So thanks, guys, for showing up. What we have on the screen is really an idea of topics and events. Some are actually happening. We know for sure. South by Southwest, we know it's going to happen. We know the AUSA annual meeting is going to happen in DC, but those all affect the ecosystem and defense ecosystem. On the top band is some ideas of things that we were looking at that may be of interest to the group. One of them, although it's probably not going to happen in February, how to work with the DoD, understanding contracts, CIBR, OTAs. It's Greek to me, but we have guys that know how to do it. And then other things with AI, working with folks at Capital Factory, AFC, Army Half Works over there, and of course DIU. This is really serendipitous for us on the DIU piece. I've been working with Zach for about 18 months from the first DIUX visit to Fort Hood. And actually Kevin and I linked up at the last DIU event here. And they're bringing Uptake here is a great model of success for a small working with DoD. It's understanding a problem, finding a customer, finding an avenue, and having something go forward. So I think it was a great time for us to, at least for us, to be here, and very fortunate for Uptake and Zach, and we really appreciate it. Please get involved, and if you have any questions, we'll be around after the event. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so TDIF, a great example for us, it's about building a national security innovation base, right, that has everyone involved in some capacity. So again, thank you for the introductions. Most importantly, though, I think for the North Carolina folks, you've now all realized unanimously that Texas does barbecue way better, right? That's the real reason we brought you down from North Carolina. So, no, it is a tremendous honor to now introduce Uptake and the president, Ganesh Bell. Ganesh is the president of Uptake, the industrial AI and IoT software leader. A proven entrepreneur, Ganesh has held executive positions across a rare mix of global giants, industry leaders, startups, and hyper-growth companies. In 2017, he was named number 11 in Fast Company's 100 most creative people in business in the world. Bell came to Uptake from GE, where he was first ever chief digital officer. Bell holds a BS in mathematics from University of Madras, India, and an MS in computer science from North Dakota State University. So with that, please, Ganesh, come on up.
Thank you. Oh, I'm got. This is on. Can you hear me? All right. Good evening. How are you guys doing? All right. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Oh. Let's take one. Thank you for that. So that's my name. That's my Twitter handle. You can follow me. And I want to tell a little bit about Uptake and take questions along with the panel. So Uptake is a little more than 4 years old. And we were founded with the idea that we saw what was happening in the consumer world that we all experience in real life, which is every industry, every business is getting reimagined with software. And some of the industries that don't get such software are like the digitally most backward industries. We saw they would also get reimagined with software. And if you just rewind the clock just 5 years ago, cloud was mainstream, big data was mainstream, but we're also starting to create new technologies in the open source world around data science and machine learning and data engineering. And so with this idea of what can we do if we apply all that technology in the industries that are actually digitally the most backward, we came up with this idea that we actually predict things that are going to happen, and we can actually build a world that always works. It seems too lofty, but it's actually doable in many of the industries. The industries that actually power us, the industries that move us, the industries that protect us, the industries that feed us. All those industries have huge, giant infrastructure that have lots of sensors and data, and less than 1% of all of that data gets used. So we believe that if we apply all of this technology, we could actually do this in the industries that build a world that always works, and that machines don't have to break. And when we started the company, we actually did this. In the first year, all of our new recruits got this kit. The kit was, besides the computers and the books and the t-shirts and everything, we gave them steel-toe boots, symbolic of the industries that we had to go into, like in construction, in mining, in energy, and now here, and hopefully soon wearing combat boots. The idea that our data scientists will wear steel-toe boots because you had to combine the subject matter experts with data science to actually get results. And very soon it became a fascinating journey. We went into industries like manufacturing. We went into industries like construction and mining, where we started collecting, and people thought that you had to put a lot of sensors. Actually found out that we don't have to put a lot of sensors. Data was already there, and it wasn't used. In fact, we would say that if you go to a wind farm, all these wind turbines have time series data they've been producing for a long time, but nobody's listening. It's kind of like if every one of us reliably posts status on Twitter, but nobody in the world cared about it. It's probably still true. But the idea being that what can you do with that kind of like an industrial graph of data? And very soon we understood that we can actually not only just predict the failure of machines or anomalies or detection, we can actually optimize things around the machine, the assets around the machine, the people that are working on the machine, the maintenance windows, and also how you make money and how you save money in every one of those industries. So very quickly it became a fast path to making money and saving money for many of our customers. And if you think about all of these different industries, the nature of the industries itself was changing. Because very soon we're also having aging workforce leaving these industries that have deep domain industrial knowledge. At the same time, we are introducing more robots, drones, wearables, and the amount of sensors was only exploding, right? Ask anybody in the world, they'll tell you it's in the billion, 25 billion, 50 billion. It's just a matter of billions of errors in terms of the number of data points. And over the last 4 years, in all of these industries, by connecting various assets, we've got thousands of wind turbines, thousands of locomotives, over 400,000 assets across the world that are connected to our cloud. And we were able to build something that we call an industrial AI and IoT suite of applications and platform. And the way it started is, and people say, how did a startup like Uptake, who have nothing in terms of domain knowledge in all these industries, get started? And it's a simple story. It's just like, when we first met a wind turbine, we obviously didn't know a lot about the wind turbine. So we hired a subject matter expert, we started working with our customers, and we said, okay, what if we can detect anomalies in that wind turbine? And very quickly it was like, if we can detect an anomaly in that wind turbine, can we detect anomalies in multiple kinds of assets? So we started, instead of building algorithms, we started building engines. Engines that can be trained to predict anomalies in any kind of scenario. And very quickly we said, okay, what if we can do failure prediction? What if we can do image analytics? What if we can do noise filtering? And we built a suite of engines, machine learning engines, that now we can quickly train models and deploy across many of these industries. These are a combination of deep learning, supervised learning engines, unsupervised learning engines, as well as reinforcement learning engines, which we're getting into now. And around this, we built a platform. And that's what we call an industrial AI and IoT platform. And we started deploying these in many different industries, and we've delivered results. Now one of my favorite examples is when we first met a locomotive, we didn't know a whole lot about the locomotive. And within 18 months, we could predict 90% of all the failures that's ever going to happen in that locomotive. Not only that, we can actually correlate it to the ambient working conditions of that locomotive, be it in a hot, harsh condition or a freezing point in a railway track, and we can correlate 7 different weather reports and predict the freezing point on a railway track along the line. And we can also predict the wind speed, the ground, or the mass, so we can predict how much energy you can make or produce more energy from the same wind out of the same wind turbine. So all of that is possible, and these turn into millions of dollars because in all of these industries, the value of a prediction needs to be incredibly precise, and when you do that, the value you get is incredibly high. And when we did that, we also started learning across all of these industries. Today, we have about 400,000 assets that are connected, and there's about 1.2 billion hours of operating data in the platform, and we're ingesting about 150 billion data points, and we have about 2,000 models deployed across all of these different industries in terms of different control points or failure modes and detecting ideas. And this is a number that, when you look at it, sounds like, what is this number? This is actually the number from Deloitte, one of our partners, and we're super fortunate to have them in helping us navigate and connect our ideas in what we can do for the defense in terms of combat readiness to other ideas like supply chain over time. And they predict that if the government were to deploy AI, you could have $37 billion of savings in a matter of few years. In fact, the number is actually even higher. If you look at, in 2015, the Army spent over $200 billion just in operations and maintenance. And we think many of that can be optimized with the right technology. Now, for many of the startups that are here, you know that you want to work on the coolest and the greatest problems, right? If you want to work on cloud when it's hot, you want to work on mobility when it's hot, you want to work on IoT or machine learning when it's hot. And one of the things that's fun about Uptake is we work in industries that matter. These are problems of consequence, not problems of convenience like recommending a song or recommending a book on Amazon. And for us, that has actually given us an edge in hiring some amazing talent. People who want to work and passionately work in these industries because not only are they working on some of the coolest technologies, they get to apply them in the industries and actually make an impact. And nothing is more impactful than doing this for us. For us, we've come full circle, and we're now proud to wear combat boots and go along with the Army in this journey. And thanks to the DIU, we wouldn't have this opportunity. A startup like us will never have the opportunity to come and work with the Army. And it's actually fascinating. It's a matter of pride for our employees. And it's a small way to say thank you. And first, we want to say thank you to everybody that's in the service. It's incredibly humbling and honored that we're to be here. So we'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ganesh. If I could ask the other panelists to please come up.
Sit in here?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do this. Okay. Now, I apologize for reading, but I want to make sure I get these introductions right because these gentlemen have phenomenal backgrounds that I do not want to mess up. So I'm joined on stage with Scott Bollock, the Chief Operating Officer of Uptake. Scott is an experienced operational leader and strategic consultant with a focus on high tech, including hardware, industrial AI, and business productivity apps. He has an extensive background in portfolio strategy, software product management, and sales and marketing operations. He's held senior roles at SAP, Terasis? Okay. Terasis. Sorry to anyone that works there. Networks, GE, and McKinsey & Company. But most importantly, he started his career as an officer in the U.S. Army. So thank you for your service. Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Johnson from PM Bradley. So this is the office that is responsible for maintaining the Bradley fighting vehicle out of Detroit. I think the weather's better here today, though. Yeah. It's much better. Yeah, better. Lieutenant Colonel Johnson is a native of Texas. He attended Colorado State University, Fort Collins, graduating in 2001 and commissioned as an infantry officer. Usually when I say infantry officer, the people say, "Roar!" No? Right. Must be an Air Force crowd, I guess. He currently serves as the product manager for the Bradley Fighting Vehicle in Program Executive Office Ground Combat Systems, which I'm sure is an acronym. It has to be. It's the Army. Located in Warren, Michigan. Lieutenant Colonel Johnson holds a Bachelor of Science in Animal Science from Colorado State University, and most importantly, a Master of Science in Engineering from the University of Texas at Austin. Hook 'em. Captain Austin Davis, the AI ML Project Manager for the Defense Innovation Unit. Austin is the lead PM for the Bradley Predictive Maintenance Prototype and an artificial intelligence machine learning researcher for DIU based in Mountain View, California. He leads efforts to increase the adoption of commercial AI ML technology throughout the military and grow the national security innovation base. In addition to the Army Bradley Flying Vehicle prototype, Austin is currently responsible for overseeing 3 other DIU prototypes supporting the F-35 and F-16 communities. You are very busy. So again, tremendous honor to have these gentlemen on stage with us. I would like to get it started just with Lieutenant Colonel Johnson. For those that don't know, what in the world is the Bradley Flying Vehicle? What is it that we're here to talk about today?
Of course. As you guys saw in that picture that Uptake had, there were a couple of guys standing on a big piece of steel. That's the Bradley fighting vehicle. The Bradley fighting vehicle, as I like to point out, is a vehicle that is over 40 years old. It was first produced in about 1978, and we've been upgrading it really ever since. I am on I guess the A4 variant, which you could argue is the probably the 6th generation Bradley. But what that does this thing work? Okay. Yeah. But what that vehicle does is it allows us in the Army to maneuver our infantry forces quickly and under protection so that they can conduct combat operations against bad guys. I mean, honestly. So when you look back at the way we used to do war, Civil War, or even in World War II, when we started with the tanks. I'm about to throw this thing out because it's not working. So now we have a vehicle that we can provide and we can maneuver our infantry in that allows us to keep up with those tanks and do the job of the infantry, which is hold ground. Tanks can't do certain things. They can do a lot of great things, but they do need the support of the ground soldier, the infantryman, and the infantry fighting vehicle, the Bradley, is what gets us there. That being said, the Bradley is also operated by engineers to allow us to overcome obstacles on the battlefield so that the infantryman and the tank can continue onto their objective. We also utilize them for our fire supporters. It's a different kind of variant, allowing them to call for fire from a long way away. We also have different variants of the Bradley. The Bradley is the base vehicle for our MLRS, multiple launch rocket system. So that's our air defenders. You've got kind of the base platform, and we put a big rocket pod on it, and the rockets shoot. And then, of course, our heavy artillery, the howitzer 155 artillery, is based on the Bradley chassis. So it's a very vital component in our operational force. Our armored brigade combat teams rely heavily on both the Bradley and the tank. And I almost forgot, we're replacing the 113. I don't know if anybody here know what a 113 is? Bunch of military folks I know previously. So you guys will be happy to know that we're finally getting rid of it. The 113 has been around longer than the Bradley, but we're replacing it with what we're calling the AMPV, the Armed Multi-Purpose Vehicle. It basically looks like a Bradley without a turret, and the Bradley is the basis for that system as well. And so there's a lot of Bradley in there in the Army. And it allows our soldiers to stay protected on the battlefield.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so it's a very critical vehicle for national defense. So Austin, there's a lot of vehicles, right? Every service has something like a Bradley. How in the world did DIU and the Army end up working together to do a project to do predictive maintenance on the Bradley?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks everybody. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for the introduction. So DIU played a critical role in that. In bringing these two together. We have a process that we've championed called the Commercial Solutions Offering. Basically, it's a process where we connect the commercial companies with problems in the DoD, and it was through that that we were able to make that connection. It starts basically by curating a problem inside of the Department of Defense and finding a customer, a problem that is of consequence, that has funding behind it. And then scaling that to a point where or narrowing it down to a point where we can identify one particular area of interest, and that goes out and is broadcast. And it's in response to that area of interest, Uptake had put in a solutions brief. And so through the process, which is competitive down selection, we were able to identify Uptake's technology as being a potential and viable candidate for solving that problem. And then the Bradley Program Office was linked up with us in particular for this specific effort. So yeah, that's basically how the relationship was forged.
So this one's for Scott. Uptake, you're a unicorn. There's 308 in the world. You're one of them. $2 billion valuation. Like, you don't need Army money. Like, how in the world did you find out about this, and why did you respond to our solicitation?
Great. So I think we found out because we've got a relatively large board of advisors, and these board of advisors include Admiral Mike Mullen. And so through Admiral Mike Mullen, he knew about the DIU program. He put us in touch with the DIU program, and we went after a couple of different opportunities that were posted, which is what the DIU is great at, is working with the Army and the armed forces and figuring out those issues that are of consequence and posting them and getting the solicitations. And so we were able to respond to the Bradley Fighting Vehicle one. We won it, and we were super excited. And as an ex-military officer, I think everyone in our company knows this is my favorite project that we have underway right now.
Yeah, and it's true, you never had any government work or DoD work prior to this, right?
That's correct.
And so now that's the beginning of a wonderful relationship. So another for Colonel Johnson, in terms of what this has meant for the military, I was just curious if you could share with the group, what is maintenance like today? How much AI is involved? How predictive is it? And what kind of potential does, I know for those that have been in the military, we know that's somewhat of a joke, but seriously, right? Yeah.
So obviously, I think there's some people out here that know already. But so when you talk Bradley maintenance, when it breaks, we call the mechanics. They come out and they either drag it back to the motor pool, because usually it breaks when we're out doing training or out on missions. And then it also kind of breaks when you're just sitting in the motor pool. And you haven't driven it in a month. But so the way we do maintenance now is the operators. So it's a crew of 3 that operates the Bradley. There's the driver who sits down in the hull, and then you've got a gunner and a commander. So the driver and the gunner are responsible for conducting what we call PMCS, preventative maintenance check sheets, right? So services, right? Sorry, I don't do that kind of stuff. I tell people hey, driver, do PMCS. Everybody knows what the 4 letters stand for. And I'm going to apologize now for any acronyms that I throw out there that you guys don't understand. Please feel free to raise your hand, and I will try to tell you what they are.
I speak Army, I used to.
See, there you go. So, so I don't know what that stands for. But so we do preventative maintenance. There's a checklist that we go through. The driver does his piece, the gunner does his, and if anything turns up wrong, then it goes on to our, what was it called? 404. Thank you. I heard it right over there. Right, and then we get it to the mechanics, and depending on what it is, we get the part and we fix it. And then, of course, obviously, there are the times where you have the catastrophic breakdowns when you're in the field and the engine breaks, and so we actually do the maintenance there. What we don't have is a compilation of those records, really kind of over time for the vehicles, and so. When I came into this job, one of my first questions that I asked was, I have a reliability requirement for the vehicle as a whole, right? But what I don't have is an understanding of the reliability of the parts that make up that vehicle. We have some of the parts we understand some of the reliability of. A lot of the parts we don't. And because at the end of the day, as long as the vehicle's reliable for the reliability requirement that we have for it, I don't care if it's the same part that breaks all the time. But yet, when we recognize that, and so right now when we do things, we do maintenance. That's how we do maintenance. So it has to kind of break first before we do it. And the benefit of Uptake and the effort that we're doing with them right now is they're able to, you know, as Ganesh said earlier, take the data that we currently have in the Bradley and try to whittle it down to something that kind of makes sense and allows us to fix it before it breaks. If I am in a position as an operational commander, battalion commander, company commander, where I know that for Alpha 1-4, as an example, as we codename everything. Alpha is Alpha Company, 1 is 1st Platoon, and 4 is the platoon sergeant's vehicle, for those of you that don't understand what I'm talking about. But, so for them to be able to tell us, hey, widget XYZ is getting ready to break in about 50 miles, or it's reaching the end of its life, we think, or we've got some triggers that are saying, hey, you might want to look at this. Well, if I'm getting ready to go on an operational mission in the next 24 hours or whatever, the last thing I want to do is take that vehicle out with a component that may or may not break. And a lot of times, our PMCS isn't going to tell us that component is borderline on breaking. And so the benefit of what we're doing with Uptake theoretically will allow us to say, oh, hey, let's fix that before I even go. Because catastrophic repairs on our vehicles are not only affect the ability of our soldiers to complete their missions, they also put our soldiers in danger for various reasons, depending on what breaks. We could have something happen to the vehicle. It could be a vehicle fire, but soldiers, or they're stuck out there and they have to set security, and that puts them at risk. And we don't want to do that. The more soldiers that we can save by doing certain things, the better.
Great, thanks. So I know that for those of us that have had the pleasure of PMCSing vehicles, I know at least I always thought that it was something very unique to my situation in life at that moment. But what I've realized in DIU, and I think Austin is agree, that many of the problems that we face in the military are really not too different than what's being faced in commercial industry, except in the DoD, the competition is literally trying to kill us, and in industry, maybe not literally. But I was wondering if, Ganesh, you could speak to understanding that you've done this for other commercial clients and commercial companies. How does the work that you're doing for them, how is it similar to what is being done in the DoD, and maybe how does it differ?
It's actually a lot similar. Even the pattern that you talked about where, we have the most advanced military in the world, yet some of these vehicles aren't as advanced. Like we talked about, everybody understood that we weren't doing the maintenance or the records and so on. It's the same in many other industries. There's a saying that says, the future is already here, it's unevenly distributed. Even here in Texas, if you take oil and gas as an industry, it's the most advanced, complex, scientifically intensive industry when it comes to finding the oil. Once they find the oil and it goes down the pipe, the amount of technology that's deployed actually goes down, right? It's the same thing. It's like there are many parts of industries where technology hasn't been applied. They're digitally backward. So we see that pattern quite a lot in many of these industries. And it's also just like Colonel Johnson talked about, where it's really about predictive maintenance at the vehicle level. Very soon it becomes readiness as an outcome, and then it's about warfighter safety. This kind of like breadcrumb of outcome map that we see in industry, where it starts with like, here, predict the machine, then it's about reliability, then it's about the setting, then it goes to like the ideas of outcomes that you can go follow, where it can go from the connected asset to the smart bases to ultimately even creating new innovation for warfighter safety. That pattern we've seen in many of these industries.
Great, thanks. So Scott, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I would say some of the differences is just learning to work with the military. And, one of the big ones is, when you're in commercial, your number one goal in terms of predictive maintenance that you're always thinking about is essentially, how do I drive down my maintenance costs while simultaneously driving up my reliability or uptime of that vehicle? And, when you go and you talk to the military, that is important. But you've got to understand first and foremost that warfighter safety is the number one goal and objective. That when that Bradley fighting vehicle goes out downrange, particularly in a combat situation, that the most important thing is the Bradley fighting vehicle is going to operate. And that drives a lot of interesting conversations, even like we were talking earlier about repairing an engine versus ripping an engine out, putting an engine back in, and then sending it to the depot. So there's a lot, I think, there that's different. I think the second, we joke about the acronyms, but you know, it's real, right? You know, JIC, DIU, TACOM, DOD, all these different organizations, and understanding how those organizations play together is learning. Understanding the chain of command. You know, the average American doesn't understand, you know, private first class versus sergeant versus warrant officer, junior military officer, general. And a lot of conversations with my team on how, you know, what are the roles, what are the responsibilities, how do people interact with one another. And then I think the last thing is meeting the Army where it's at. We talk about the connectivity. A lot of what we've done is figuring out how we can get connectivity to the Bradley fighting vehicle to pull the data out. Then obviously, you know, it's different on how you store it, because this is, as you start to aggregate the information, it becomes national security. And then finally, it's you know, that data is new. And so it's really working with the Army to analyze that data together. So, you know, I'd say, you know, three things really quick there. It's meeting the Army where it is. It's about the acronyms, and those are some of the things that, and then warfighter safety are three things that I think are different for people to think about.
So Uptake, being a Series D startup, raised a valuation of about $2 billion, again, one of 308 unicorns in the world. What did your investors think when you were going after a Department of Defense contract, which you had never done before?
Actually, one of our board of advisors lives in DC, and he's been kind of telling us to go do this for a long time, which is why we hired Russ, who's here. He leads our federal practice. And it's a test of our technology and solution. It's also a matter of pride. We're an American company, and we're not a consumer software company like a Google or a Facebook or Amazon, or, you know, we don't have anything to gain consumer-wise. We work with enterprises. This happens to be the largest enterprise in the world, and you have outcomes. Your outcomes are different, but some of the technology challenges are very, very similar. Like what we're learning is, if we can help with the Bradley, we can probably help you design a better vehicle, or even figure out where the next set of sensors need to go and how that connects to your supply chain. And that's where we can even work with vendors like a Deloitte to go figure out how do you eventually connect back into all your enterprise systems. So the problem space is very similar, but the impact we can make is bigger. So they're very excited about the ability to go test and build a durable platform in a company, more so than the dollars.
Yeah. Now, that being said, though, if we had made this take 2 years and required hundreds of pages of paperwork, it may not have happened.
Yeah,
in
we
such a
probably
way,
would have,
so-
because as a startup, our resources are very, very scarce. We have to choose where we can deliver quick wins. Anything, you know, these are industries, actually, I would joke with many of our, you know, fellow industry colleagues in Silicon Valley, or we happen to be headquartered in Chicago with offices everywhere else. We'll tell them, like, don't go into deep industry if you have to do a, you know, make paycheck. Because it takes, the cycles are really, really long, and the DIU interaction actually facilitated us to move at the speed that startups can be, and we have to be selective, and we're fortunate to be selective and have this engagement.
Yeah, no, that's great, thanks. How has this changed the trajectory of the company, aside from it being now your favorite project? But has Uptake changed? Has a unicorn changed since working with the DoD?
I don't think we've changed. I think, you know, we definitely, and this goes back to the DIU, because, you know, when you look at, when you're a startup, you are looking for where can I get those quick wins. You're looking for what pins am I hitting, because I can't hit all pins at once. And I think what it did really change for us is that without the DIU, the government probably wouldn't have been one of those pins from us, because you've got to have a lot of investment in terms of people who understand the military. And then even if you are from the military and you understand the Bradley fighting vehicle and you're the best mechanic in the world and and you're the best repairer, you got to understand all the processes. And then you got to make a huge investment in DC to win those first opportunities. And so I think the biggest thing for us when I look at our trajectory is we wouldn't have probably had federal is one of our major opportunities, but now it is one of those pins. And you know, we're working day and night. Was checking on the data analysis that we were running right before this session, and you know, we're convinced that we're going to show some value and hopefully build out a big practice and help our military.
That's great. Thanks, Scott. Austin, can you add a bit more just about how, a little bit more about our process timeline generally for how we like to award and how we like to work with startups on their returns?
Yeah, absolutely. So as they've attested, one of our goals is to increase the national security innovation base. So getting companies that have never worked with the DoD into business with the DoD is really a matter of two core components. It's speed, operating the speed that you companies would need to operate on, and then also lowering those barriers of entry, right? And so we're talking about the processes and the methodologies, and then also helping to bridge the cultural gap, right? So on that vein, our process is designed to streamline that using other transaction authorities out of Title 10 U.S. Code, which governs how the DoD is legally able to operate. So after curating a problem internal to the DoD, we post out this area of interest to the public that companies can submit solution briefs to. And those basically say how the company is aiming to solve the problem that the DoD has presented in that AOI, or that area of interest. The idea here is not to burden you with a 1,000-page report of how you're going to solve it, nor is it our goal to specify down to the most minute detail how we want the problem solved, but to present to you, the companies, the problem, and for you to recapitalize on what you've already built, what you've already established as you've talked to VCs and the other customers that you work with on, here's how we do business, here's how we solve your problems. So the barrier of entry there is very low. So it's, I think, a 5-page maximum, 15 slides maximum response. So very small, easy glide slope to entry into that AOI. We then go through 3 phases of winnowing down and narrowing down what is the best solutions that we've received. And in doing so, we're able to vet out, is the company going to be, is what they provided in response to the AOI in line with what we're actually interested in? Does the company have the backing, the support? Have they demonstrated in other areas commercial viability that has that transference into this DoD problem? The entire timeline, the goal for DIU is to go from the AOI through that winnowing down process to the award of the contract in about 60 days. That's our goal. And that's much faster than what you see in the traditional acquisition arms. You're talking going from nothing to award in 60 days, and then going into that award as a prototype. Our prototypes generally are about 2 years in length, some a little bit shorter. This one in particular is actually only a 12-month period of performance. And so in that period, we're prototyping it to evaluate whether or not it actually does provide value. That's where our customer base inside the DoD actually is really making the call on how much value is added to our operations. And the real beauty about these authorities that we're exercising under other transaction agreements is that unlike other contracting mechanisms, it provides us with sole source justification at the conclusion of that contract for continuing business at production scale, at enterprise scale, with that company. And that is something that's markedly different from our traditional acquisitions. We get to iterate with this company, get to iterate with the user, so that that user is not so far separated from the requirements of solving the problem that, that we get delivered something that is just not exactly what they needed. We're able to get that feedback to the company, they're able to iterate on it, do it quickly, and give us capability faster. So if that answered the question, I think that's
much better than I could have. Thanks, Austin. But building on that, I will say, being a design partner, having the Department of Defense as a design partner, one that pays you, first off, right? One that you don't have to pay, but to understand how to take your technology, how to make it better, how to make it more commercializable, really helping you build that use case as a partner of the Department of Defense is really something that we pride ourselves on. Colonel Johnson, I've been dying to ask, so when I think about who works at an AI startup, I think about shorts, sandals, maybe a man bun. I'm jealous, honestly, I'm jealous. What has that been like to have AI startup, some of the smartest people in our nation, coming to the motor pool and working to bring AI to it?
Well, that's an interesting question. I can't get the man bun out of my head. No, so this was started by my predecessor. We kind of kicked it off, and we started kind of before I came in the seat, and one of the things he told me was, look, this is a win-win situation for you. It's either going to work, and you're going to come out on top, and everyone's going to be super proud of Bradley because Uptake did a good job, or it's not going to work, and you're going to demonstrate that it doesn't work, and I'm out a little bit of money. But I think at the end of the day, the team that Uptake has put on this, and working with my guys, I think we've got a good mix. It's nice to work. Uptake is a unique company because they do something that we don't. They're not traditional DoD contractors, right? So they have a unique perspective that our big major defense companies sometimes lack, and it's not because they don't have innovation in there. It's just they're big. When you talk about the Army and we try to do innovation, we're big. It take, how old did I say that Bradley was? 40, right? It's 40 years old. So innovation's is hard for us. But being able to work with small companies, like Uptake, allows us to move at a speed more in line with the way technology kind of moves today. And so I appreciate the partnership that we have with Uptake. I know that my team that works on this on a daily basis is appreciative of everything that you guys do. And so it's just good to see that we've got that kind of relationship. And I'm really looking forward to the next 6 or 7 months of work with them to see kind of really what they were able to do on kind of really honestly a small scale. My fleet is 3,364 vehicles total, and they're just putting these on about 35 or so. So 1% of my fleet for about, they're collecting data for 6 months. They're going to start analyzing it and then actually running their algorithms and all those things you saw in those cool slides, this cool slideshow that Ganesh had, to be able to tell us, hey, widget 678's getting ready to, we think you might want to look at it. And getting those kind of insights, I think, is going to be really cool. And initial reports are we're going to get at least something useful out of this. So, but I do appreciate Uptake, and I appreciate all the hard work that they've put into this so far. And of course, DIU, obviously, for kind of throwing this out on the street for people to bite on, and then getting it backtracking it to Bradley so that we can kind of be on the front line of some cutting edge technology.
Oh, that's great, thanks. So we only have a few minutes left before we get to Q&A, which I think will be really important for the folks out here. So I'd like to go around one last time, and any closing words you would have, any advice for folks. Colonel Johnson, I'd love to know if you have any advice on people who want to help, who want to serve with or without a man bun. How can they get involved and help promote national security?
Well, I guess the simplest, one of the easiest ways is to show up to things like this. I know it's hard for industry to break into the defense sector, and so but there are avenues out there that are available. One of the biggest things, and I know that Austin kind of hit on it a little bit, but we have what we call consortiums, which is kind of how we do our OTAs, our other transaction authorities, and so just being part of those. And there are a lot of them, depending on what you do, what your interest is. There are a lot of options out there for you to at least get those those concerns where we reach out and ask for white papers on, hey, this is the list of things that we're interested in, and you can reply back to one of them, all of them, none of them, provide something completely different. But once we have it, as long as there's somebody who's interested that has money, we're kind of able to get there. But and that's one of the reasons AFC stood up here. I can't speak for AFC, but I do know that in the deliberations that they had of trying to figure out where they wanted to go, as we mentioned earlier, we wanted to put the Army wanted to put AFC somewhere different. And with all the man buns that I saw earlier coming in here, I would argue this is something different than a high and tight. Everyone wears something different. When you work in the Army, you all dress the same, right? So, coordinate with Austin here. He's probably got better contacts than I do, but obviously stay engaged, reach out, and just try to, FedBizOps. Anybody here doesn't know what FedBizOps is? Okay, we got a handful. So FedBizOps is the way where we try to do traditional acquisition, where we put out requests for proposals or requests for project proposals or something. And that's another way for you to kind of get an idea of what's going on, to kind of see where your specific solution set at your company or what your company does, where you can see kind of where you might be able to fit in. The other option, besides going it alone by yourself, is to partner with someone. Whether that's somebody who's already in the defense space, or with DIU or whatever, but being able to partner with someone that may or may not be able to leverage your unique solution is also another way for you to kind of get your foot in the door, and then you can start working on it, and then eventually as you build your profile and your portfolio, and you get an understanding of how it kind of works, at which point you'd be able to kind of branch out on your own with what you have. If that
That's
helps.
great. I didn't realize you could respond to some of those solicitations and write whatever you want. That's the approach I took for my finance final. So we'll see how that turned out. But no, Austin, I'd like to go over to you. So in terms of specifically with DIU, not consortium based, it's direct contracting, 60 days. For those out here and watching wherever they are in the world, realizing that, oh, wow, there may be national security implications to what I do. I didn't realize it until just now. What can I do? How can I get a piece of this? And how can I still move at commercial speed with commercial terms and get my tech in the DoD?
Yeah, sure. So couple things. First of all, one thing to differentiate is that we don't do consortium-based OTs through DIU. We do direct award to the company, other transaction agreements. And one thing that's nice about them is this is non-dilutive. So we are not interested in taking any of your intellectual property or taking a part of your company. This is supposed to be a win-win. We want you to be just as successful as we want that success to also translate into new technologies, new capabilities in the DoD. So one of the best places to get involved if you're interested in working with DIU is to go to our website, diux.mil. We have officially dropped the X, but not from our URL yet. Oh, it's up to it now, so we've got our IT guy over here helping us out. But if you're interested in working with us, there's instructions on there. There's details on what is our process, what does it look like. We put our offerings on our website, so as new AOIs get posted, new problem sets are open, you can go in there and respond to them. Those are usually open from anywhere from 7 to 21 days. That short window of time is open for acceptance of your solutions brief. So I'd say keep a read on that. We do also post to FedBizOps, and as best as we possibly can, me, PMs, and some of our other folks in DIU try to blanket out the contacts that we have made with companies that have related technology that we may see some dual-purpose use to make sure that as widely as possible, you guys are able to participate. Our goal is to expand the innovation base, and so what that really means is maintaining a very wide network of companies that have the potential to transition that technology in. And so I'd say that those are probably the easiest ways to get involved. If you have specific questions, want to talk to me either in the Q&A session or afterwards, be happy to answer those.
Great, thanks, Austin. So for Scott and Ganesh, I'd love to share for the AI startup founders out there, or for the wannabe unicorns that want to join that very prestigious club, what advice would you have for them?
Well, first of all, I've been thinking about everyone who's been on this engagement. There are no man buns, but there is definitely one long hair.
And that was an Air Force person, probably.
So I think, look, I would say the following. I think, one, the DIU is a great vehicle. It's a great way to get started. I think, second, Colonel Johnson, your comment is you look at scaling of looking at partners who are out there and how partners can help you scale. We're working a lot with Deloitte and working with them on how we could scale here and look at other opportunities, and that's important because the DoD is a big machine if you win, and you got to make sure that you can deliver. And then the third thing I would say is don't underestimate, in our society, there's a lot of people who haven't served. And the one thing that we've really found is that the people who are on this project are so motivated by the fact that they are, for the first time in their life, connected into the military. And that is a sense of providing to the national security. And secondarily, Colonel Johnson, the one thing I'd say is they just love going down to the motor pool at Fort Hood and hanging out with the soldiers. And whether that be the private or the chief warrant officer or the officer on ground, you all have literally made them feel like they're an extension of the first Cav. And they got the first Cav flag up and in their office, and they're just beaming with pride. And I hope they're listening right now, because it's an incredible group of data scientists and engineers who are just pouring their heart and soul into that. And that's something any company should look at, because it's just a juicer on the morale of the company.
I think the only thing I'll add, I think the last is one of the things. It's lifted pride, not just the people who are actually in the project, but across the company. That's probably the biggest change that we've had, is the sense of pride in having this engagement. And to the startup people and the investors, I'll tell you this: when you apply machine learning AI to any of the industries, it is not the same as all of past business software. I like to think of all of software is only a few decades old. And investors are used to kind of like taking the same idea, rinse and repeat in a new technology, from mainframe to client server to pseudo web to SaaS to cloud to, it's the same idea. It's the same ERP, same CRM, same supply chain that gets redone. Whereas these kind of problems are incredibly different. So you need the right kind of investor who's looking at the long term. It's not high tech. We like to say it's hard tech and deep tech, because you could go further, deeper into the industry. That's why we talk about, like, you got to wear the steel toe boots, you got to wear the combat boots, go and learn the deep, because the intersection of deep science and subject matter expert is where it's going to happen. That means you need the right investors who are willing to invest in the long haul versus a quick win. So I would say surround yourself with the right investors on top of the advice that Scott gave.
That's great. No, thank you so much. If you could help join me, give a round of applause to our amazing panelists. We're now ready to open it up for Q&A. We have some disruptive technology here, which will literally disrupt what you're doing if it hits you. Oh boy, let's see how this goes.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Ooh, first throw.
Does it work?
Oh,
Yeah.
it even works. So, Ganesh and Scott, for a startup that has not gone into the defense industry, how much do we need to budget in cost, both in time and money, just to get to that point of even beginning to have, hopefully it's successful, but that round and that effort that it takes to do that, what do we need to expect in that?
You take it?
Yeah, I'll take it. I think if you look at using the DIU, and there is a solicitation out there that matches your company's capabilities and you respond, I would say two things. One, the sales cycle is compressed, right? You're talking about essentially, a 60-day sales cycle. And then the second thing I would say is the project is largely going to be run like any other project you run in your company. I don't think there really are a lot of additional cost versus if you were to say, I'm going to go win an oil and gas client, or I'm going to go win a manufacturing client. And I think that really isn't a testament to what the DIU is really doing. You know, I think the only thing that you would say on top of it is, you know, if you're an AI company like us, you're going to go look at getting some great people with military background, but that's 1 or 2 people. And the rest of it, I think, and honestly, that's what you do in any engagement if you went into any new industry, because you need that expertise. And that's an answer from the brain and from the heart, and it's why we were really honored to be here and to support the work of the DIU.
I guess just specifically, is it 30 days that you put out? Working 30 days?
So I would say the following, right, which is it's given the past experience of trying to do this also, it was faster than attempting to go into another industry for us. We were in, say, energy and manufacturing and oil and gas and heavy equipment. For us to go into yet another new industry would have required way more upfront investment and longer cycle, first in terms of people understanding the jargon, understanding the outcomes that actually matter. Whereas here, the DIU made it very clear, so we can actually self-select out very quickly. And it was a shorter process for us to get a yes or a no. So if you got a no, it's still good. We only spent little. So it's actually few people getting ready. Identifying the use case for us was right in our target spot. It's another complex machine, and once we do that machine, it becomes about the people, it becomes about the connected setting. It's the same pattern we have done. So for us, the cost of barrier to entry, because of the process the DIU had, was much lower than adding a new industry for us.
If I could add on to that, that's not by accident. So it's by design. We are trying to adopt those practices that are out in the commercial world and just be a really good customer. We don't want to be necessarily your only customer. We want to be a good customer, and that requires us to operate at the speed that you are accustomed to operating on. In that phased approach during our CSO process, as we receive your responses to the AOIs, we want that relationship to build as the commitment grows, right? So initially, that first cut is based on 5 pages, 15 slides, right? It's only as we move through the process that the time investment and the understanding and the vetting, we want to get into deeper layers. We don't want that right up front because we don't want you wasting your time, just as we don't want to end up diving into areas that are not necessarily applicable to that problem set. So by design, we want it to be as easy for you to get into this space as possible, and that's why we've designed the processes in that way. So it's really good to hear that was the experience that you guys had.
Last question for Ganesh. Now that you've had success initially getting this started, do you see yourself going to Air Force, Navy, other projects in the Department of Defense since you were leading in this path?
That would be our desire, clearly, because it's the network effects of solving that problem. Independent of us, I think the Army and the DoD should think that way because they get the network effect of connecting multiple assets and the learning across the multiple assets, which is why we were able to do this in the first place, right? Because we started from a position of weakness, unlike many people who came into the industrial world, which is we didn't build the machines that operate the industrial world. We actually came from a position of weakness because we had to figure it out using data science and machine learning and applying subject matter experts. And the more we did, it got better, right? Because we were able to do locomotives, we can actually go do trucks. Because we can do trucks, we can do other moving things. Because we can do other moving things, we can do subsystems of components of the Bradley and so on. So the network effect of connecting multiple kinds of vehicles and solving problem, because then you look at operations maintenance. So it becomes a asset optimization, then it becomes a operations optimization, and that unlocks value that could also lead into supply chain optimization and so on. So the use cases are probably more advantage for the DoD to think that way, and obviously our desire would be, and our platform's built that way to be connected that way.
Sure.
So it sounds like this project is starting from about 35 vehicles, right? And so my question is, why you didn't look at the historical data from all of the thousands of vehicles that were already out there? And
So easy answer is we don't really have it. I should say we do and we don't. And it's not necessarily consistent. A lot of times something will break on the 20, we'll put it on the 24/4, we'll repair it. A lot of times it doesn't get put into our records, right? So our record keeping system isn't necessarily the best. Disagree?
No, I couldn't agree more.
There.
Understated.
Sorry, I don't want to let out all my dirty laundry. So that was kind of the problem, and so we had to be able to give them, allow them to be able to collect some data, because if I wasn't just able to give it to them as raw data, and we wanted them to be able to pull off the vehicles that they're actually using on, so they can do it on those vehicles. And then obviously if, depending on how it works and how the Army wants to proceed, if they decide to do it fleet-wide or do a larger pilot, we can look at correlating components as they break in this vehicle at Fort Riley. Maybe those same conditions we're seeing that at the vehicles at Fort Hood, or the vehicles at Fort Bliss, or Fort Carson, or Fort Stewart, or Germany, or Korea, right? So that was kind of the piece. So it was just kind of doing something small, get them started. We did actually get to provide them data from the system for what we have for I guess our fluids analysis. We do have a pretty good record of that. Because we're required to basically take fluids and do fluid samples every 60 days or so. We send that back and they run a bunch of tests on it and tell us whether it's good or not. So we're able to give them that data on those 35 vehicles because we have it. And so they'll be able to kind of run some of their algorithms on that. But yeah, your question is well taken. I kind of asked the question as well, and we just weren't able to do that, to provide that historical data, because it's not, it doesn't have the fidelity, I think, that we kind of needed to be able to ensure that this would work.
Hello, my name is Tahar Roa Martinez. I am the CEO and founder of Cyber Warfighters Group. My question is to Janesh. As you're coming up with these great solutions, the DoD space is unlike any other with the security criteria it has to operate in that space. Not only the facility clearances that we have to go through those hurdles as well. Where was there a bottleneck where you found the solution, all was well, and you met the 30 days and you're about to move forward? How did you get through, for example, JITC approved compliances and all those security controls that are in no other space?
That's a great question. For us, one of the things actually we have a fantastic cybersecurity team, and we actually had a cybersecurity business. And the more we went deeper into the cybersecurity business, we also realized that securing our cloud, securing our practices was way more important than actually being a cybersecurity solutions provider. So we actually got out of the cybersecurity solution provider business to make sure that we are actually focusing on securing all of customer data, dealing with all of the security requirements customers have. That actually gave us a leg up, and that probably goes back to your question. I think we had the previous investment, so if you hadn't done that level of investment, you would have to make that level of investment, because we were fully able to go. We knew exactly what we have to go do, run an air-gapped environment, to go deploy in a Gov cloud, all of those kinds of things, because we were always building the infrastructure. We did spend almost $400 million building our platform to go run on multiple clouds with some of the best cybersecurity. So that was if we didn't have that, yes, you're right. It'll be an additional long hurdle for you to get prepared, yes.
There we go.
Hi, thank you for a great talk. And then I have one question about raw technology. So my company provides like very powerful database engine, but it's not something that we can, like use right away. We might have to work with Uptake kind of companies that provide solutions on the top of database engine. But I was wondering if DIU is also interested in our kind of technology, which is just like can power other systems. Like let's say your portfolio have like lots of like startups, like super great, but they might have some data problems. We might be able to power them, but we wouldn't be DIU's direct target. So what kind of strategy like we can have for my kind of company?
Sure, great question. Thank you for that. So I'd say two ways. First, if there's an AOI out there that you have perhaps peripheral application to, apply to it. The OT process does not preclude us and prevent us from pairing up companies that we think will actually synergize really well. So there's that opportunity. The second way to do it is you can actually submit a solutions brief that's non-solicited. So it's sort of like a way to put yourself in the Rolodex so that we are aware of the company and the technology that you bring, so that if there are those opportunities to pair with, and we do see that, we want to partner you with somebody else, we have that reach back to you. So I'd recommend those two ways.
Good afternoon, Anthony Gant. For Austin, when I looked on your site, I saw one of the larger companies like Raytheon that continually makes products for the military and certain form tanker N1A1. So I understand, I know, right? When I see that, it concerns me that they might circumvent the bureaucratic process that they're going through right now through getting stuff from the needs of the service to get it approved and through DOD and back out to, like you said, 40 years. It probably took longer than that when somebody thought about it before they started actually making it to when they got to the troops. And the troops who asked for it were no longer in the service. They probably retired and went on. So when they come and see that, like Raytheon sees that, hey, DIU is available, now we can circumvent the bureaucratic process. How do small businesses compete against the Boeings and the Northrop Grumman's and all the other major corporations and circumvent the process and knock the small business out? How do you guys help prevent that, or do you prevent that?
Yeah, so in short, what we want to do is even the playing field, right? If the bureaucratic tape is what keeps you from doing business with the DoD, we want to help with that. Let your technology be what differentiates you and earns you the business. That's what I'd say.
Hi, how you doing? I'm not really familiar with the specific mission statement of your organizations, but it seems like it's, I mean, these are big endeavors, and that was one of the questions I had was the security element. You know, I mean, we're talking about readiness data. It's got to be super secure. So I was gonna ask before they asked, smart question, is do y'all take the burden of the security? That would be nice, and that would definitely allow more access for startups to play ball.
So absolutely, we're going to do our best to help you through the processes, but ultimately, your relationship with one of our customers is going to long outlast the prototype, right? And so when you move into production on these prototypes, DIU and our role has stopped, and then your relationship with the DoD continues. And so there are opportunities for you to fast track some of these certifications. One of the first ones that comes to mind is the FedRAMP process. But I don't really have too great of an answer for that. Pat, would you mind if I...
Well, he doesn't have the microphone, I say this. So one other piece of this is that part of the process of us going through this whole thing, part of that diligence is to make sure that we've worked with the military customer and we've worked and set it up in such a way that startups can play and even the playing field. If it took you 60 days to get a contract and another 200 days to get access to the data, then that hasn't really helped anything, right? And so for us, that's part of the responsibility that we take as the DoD, that when we put out these solicitations, in addition to flexible IP, commercial terms, commercial speed, we also make it to where you can actually use the data that we need. And I feel like I'd be remiss to not mention, Another effort we've done is partnering with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. We have one of our reps here. NGA made millions of images declassified and opened them up to outside people to apply their algorithms and techniques, something that was really unprecedented before. But same idea. If we'd had to get clearances and polygraphs, that wouldn't have been quite as easy for startups. So we work with our DoD partners, figure out how do we bring these companies closer to the DoD and bring the DoD data closer to the companies.
Let me be so bold as to ask two questions in one. It used to be the case with government contractors that their books and records were subject to audit by the government as to whether or not they kept their books in particular ways that the government wanted them kept. And it was always a fight with the government to keep the government out of your commercial records. Is that something that still goes on in government procurement?
Certainly for us.
Just a quick yes or no.
I mean, yes.
Yes.
But
yeah, okay.
For
okay.
For
that
us,
was
it's very
that was
important.
something I was afraid was in existence.
So let me caveat my yes. It depends on the type of contract that you've been awarded. If we are doing a cost plus or a fixed price with an incentive fee, a lot of times earned value management is tied to that. As we do our review of the proposal, and it all depends on the dollar price as well. The larger the contract award, the more scrutiny that we're going to put into your bookkeeping. You know, and then of course, you know, if we're doing earned value management, we're really keeping tracks of your cost accounting methods, right? And we kind of have to have an understanding of those before we even do award, because we know we're going to do earned value management, and we need to know that you guys can do it. But then, of course, we also have awards where if it's firm fixed price, most of the time we don't care, right? We will we're gonna pay you $10, and you're gonna give me whatever we agreed to on the timeline that we agreed to do it on. Right. Otherwise, there's you know, if it's cost or a fixed price incentive fee, there's a little bit more rigor that we're going to put in there to ensure that we're getting a good investment on our dollar.
Just one more thing. If I want to do business with you, and I am pretty sure that what we're going to be doing business with you about is classified, and I do not have security clearances right now, can I just go out and get security clearances? Don't I have to have some kind of a need to know from DOD to even engage with the people who do the background checks, such that, is this a chicken and the egg deal about security?
Well, I would just say this. So now that all the startups are scared that they're all going to have the government raid their books.
They ought to know.
Right. Our contracts, as he mentioned, firm fixed price, you do not have to become compliant with these onerous defense accounting standards to do this, right? Again, going back to this earlier question, if we got you a contract in 60 days and said, ooh, we're going to need to look at your books for the next 4 months, that would not help. That would not get us anywhere. And our process and our contracts are designed in such a way so that, again, startups can move at startup speed.
As I do recall, though, a lot of study contracts with the government are cost reimbursable contracts.
Right. Which
is
right.
Right,
but
right
then
in the
getting
middle
to
of
your,
that.
right, to your second question about classified work, and this is personal for me because I've spent a lot of time in windowless rooms that are not very fun to be in, that many times people will say, well, this has to be classified. We have to do classified work. You know, I mean, this is super secret, both on the company and the DoD side. And when you realize at the end of the day, many of these things do not need to be classified. Or even if it is for a classified use, the technology, right? The most sensitive, secure, crazy rooms in the world where they would kill you if you try to get in, they all run Windows, Microsoft Windows, right? That's a very common denominator, in addition to many other things. And so you would be surprised in all likelihood at how unclassified much of the most critical technology and information is to national security. And that's in many ways why we do what we do in DIU. And just as an example, launch a $3 billion classified satellite or rent the data from a geospatial company who's selling it to commercial companies in the Fortune 500. So that's another aspect of what we do, is in democratizing the contract process to level the playing field for startups. In a sense, we democratize their ability to solve some of the most challenging, the most complicated the most classified national security challenges with an unclassified approach.
I applaud you for that. I bring that question up, though, because I think a lot of the companies that are doing some of the innovative things that you're interested in don't have security clearances. And if you got to have a government contract to go get a security clearance, you guys need to figure out how to make that go away somehow.
We're on it, sir.
So everybody's on a level playing field. Otherwise, the only people who'll be able to compete will be those who already have a security clearance. And then you'll miss out on some of the innovation of some of these companies in Austin.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Do you have a question?
Yes. Thank you. Hi, I'm Irene Brinker. I have a company called Diwali. And my question is about the sensors that you use, because I know that in order to get the data for you to do, what you guys do on it, it has to come from somewhere. So are you putting those sensors into the vehicles? Are those sensors already there? How does that work?
So in almost most of the industries that we operate in, we actually first look at existing operational data. And in most of the industrial world, there's actually some kind of operational data. In fact, most operation people would say it's OT data, not IT data, because these are basically time series data off of existing things, as well as data that you keep, like fuel, oil sample analysis data, and so on. So all of that data already exists. So we're not putting any new sensors in. But as some of our customers deploy our solution, they get smarter about what additional information that would be useful. So we've been in some industries, we'll go and suggest to them that you need the following additional sensor data, and they'll probably put in with a partner. We don't make hardware, we work with partners to put like a vibration sensor data or thermal sensor data, or they want to start using a drone to get a thermal image, because it's nothing more than an aerial sensor, right? All of that data comes back. So in this case, we're working with existing data, and as the new vehicles are being built, hopefully we can actually participate and help inform about the new sensors that are being built in, is how useful they are, should they actually reposition. You can use it for many different purposes. We're seeing that in other industries like manufacturing, where it's a 10-year-old plant, we use all the data that it already has. Or they have a plant, but they're putting 3 new robots in. They want to know what other additional sensors and data that they should gather. They're actually doing the trial run with us to figure out what is the additional data that they. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. And I think my just kind of follow-on question there, if someone hires you and you look at the data and the data doesn't give you, what they're looking for, right? How would you handle that? And have you found, and I don't know if you've already done this with the military, have you found that the military is more or less open to adding in additional pieces?
So incomplete data is what you're talking about. So I think most of the time we always find good enough data to provide some insight. The challenge is not the incompleteness of the data, it's actually the integrity of the data. Most of the time, and we kind of scratch our own itch and built this platform, right? We were a team of about 150 data scientists and data engineers that originally started building this platform, and most of the time they were doing data wrangling, data munging, data ingestion, and cleansing problems. And we started applying our own algorithms against it. So now we are actually able to build what we call data integrity through using our own machine learning bots. So we actually go in and fill in the information. We actually look at cleansing information, removing the noise, and making this industrial asset graph. So most of the time, yes, we find something, but then we can actually go back and inform, if you had the additional piece of information, here's the other things that you can go do.
Yeah, and I think that's important. As you look at data science and you are looking at solving the problem, along the way you're going to find there's new data sources that you want. And oil was one that Colonel Johnson brought up. Well, if there's oil samples and we can get those oil samples in the same time period that we have the sensor data, in the same time period that we have maintenance records, great. Now we've got a much richer data set. Now we can look at actual failures and we can start to do correlations around different types of signals that are coming. And that's no different in any problem that you're solving. You could be in a manufacturing plant, automobile in Lansing, Michigan, and you're still going to find as you go along that new data sets may allow you to get richer. It's also a decision for you in terms of, what is the precision and accuracy you're looking for. And that's kind of a trade-off as well.
Thank you.
And also, you know, just to expand on that, one thing that's really remarkable about what Uptake's been doing is that, you know, the data on the Bradleys has already been being generated on the Bradleys for a long time. The problem was that no one was listening. So they've actually taken the additional step to help us to capture that data and feed it into their engine so they could provide us those insights. So we're now leveraging data that no one has ever looked at before. And that's really a remarkable add that they've been able to bring in.
The people watching do, though.
Just a quick question. We talked about partnership. You've been blessed with two very important partnerships with Chairman Mullen and Deloitte. Kind of going back to Grant's question in Raytheon, I don't look at Raytheon as a necessarily somebody that's going to kill innovation as a whole. I'm curious on you guys' thoughts on partnering with Deloitte and the opportunity that exists in partnering with companies that have existing relationships with the federal government.
Yeah, it's multiple things. One is sometimes you choose partner because you want to stay core to the focus that we want to do, and there are other use cases somebody else can help with, and also it's about scale. When we go, if we want to connect pretty much everything that's out there, we need a implementation partner who can go implement that. But also there's lots of other use cases of new applications that you can go build. We almost think of every customer environment as we can blanket the entire environment in a set of machine learning models. We can build failure prediction models across all of the assets and connect the environment, but then there are additional use cases of new applications that you will uncover, and somebody else has to go build all of that. And that's how we think about the problem. So when somebody's already working with our customers, like Deloitte is, that's a great partnership for us because it allows us to scale. They allow us to focus on what we're good at and what they're good at, which is connecting the entire enterprise.
Thank you.
Yeah, but just one thing back. I mean, we were blessed with the Admiral Mullen relationship, but the one thing I would say is he educated us. But what he really educated us on was DIU. And I think that if you look at DIU and you go back and you look at all their selections, you know, my belief is that those selections really are based on meritocracy. They're really based on what commercial solutions off the shelf are best going to meet the requirements that the warfighter is giving them. And so I think, you know, we got that from an admiral, but anybody in this room now has that piece of information as well, and you've been given the URL. So I think it truly is you know, on that point, I just want to say that is one of the things that I think the DIU is doing great, which is really trying to lower the playing field and give anybody the chance to go in there and have the opportunity to meet a solicitation that they have.
Thank you. That's perfect.
So last question to the gentleman in the blue shirt. We got this. Oh, close enough.
All right, hey, deciphering the data that you get and illustrating it graphically to the leaders above anybody in this room that are making decisions for you in the military or wherever. What have you done to capitalize on that? Because obviously it's working.
Yeah.
And I just want to understand that because there's a lot of customers that get a lot of data. It's very confusing. How do you illustrate that type of thing? And you can't answer that in one night, I know, but
no,
it's a very
actually
difficult
we
thing to do.
can do a very simple version of it, which is we tell people that we can take pretty much most of the data that you have, and just like Facebook understands your social network and LinkedIn understands your professional network, we kind of understand the asset network or the enterprise data graph. So we can actually show that to people. And most people are familiar with like a central command center. Like most of our customers have something called an IT network operations center. And all of the CEOs, CXOs would say, data is the new oil. It's the most strategic thing I have. If you ask them, where is that strategic data, they won't be able to tell you that. Right? So, and we challenge them that it's not the data you entered into your ERP or CRM, it's the operational data that you have across your environment. That's the most strategic. How come you don't have a data operations center? So can we actually show you that? And we actually show them that. In fact, one of our biggest customers has a data operations center where it's about 400,000 assets, and it's about thousands of data pipelines that are coming. So we can show them, here's how the data is coming in. It's actually imperfect. Here's how it's being cleaned. Here's how we assemble that piece. Then on top of that, we can just say, here's the amount of data algorithms we've deployed, the trust in all the recommendations at the end of the day, is a human accepting the recommendation. Software can make all the recommendations and predictions. The human has to accept that recommendation. And to do that, we actually build something called a model performance report. I'm sure somebody in our marketing will rebrand it, or maybe it'll pass the military test because it's a 3-letter acronym. And all that does is basically show all of the machine learning models we've deployed for a customer, and what are all the predictions, how do we do, both failures and successes, how early did we predict, and are we getting better, or are we getting worse over time? So that radical transparency in terms of the predictions that we're making help you form your own opinion in terms of the acceptance of that data. So that gives you a sense of like how we're walking up the curve of data, integrity, the data science model, then getting confidence in it, and then injecting and building applications around it. So it's connecting back to the full workflow. And the technologies are there to kind of like fully automate a decision today, but it's the human in the loop you need to do the reinforcement learning and acceptance of that recommendation.
That's great. And I think on that note, we should probably end it. Just want to again thank Ganesh and Scott from Uptake for flying down to Austin. Truly an honor to have you today. Colonel Johnson flying in from PM Bradley, Austin coming over from DIU. And a huge thank you to those of you in the room and online that tuned in. You are all now part of the National Security Innovation Base. Congratulations. Thank you for what you're doing, your support of these efforts. We all have a part to play in this, and we look forward to having more events like this in the future. So have a wonderful night. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Years later, I get into Future Force Integration Director because the next combat vehicle that didn't work. Then I was there. Then I get into the Army Chiefs. Then I get into the Army Chief's office, Army Chief's Transportation, helping him with all this. Then I come down here for what's going on with innovation technology 8 years ago. So when Josh Baer said that there were guys doing this before, he was talking about me. So this is Facebook. I was the Friendster of MySpace. So, but here's the best part. Then I got out of the Army, got into tech, got into data aggregation, built a tech company in transportation. Had a lot of fun, sold it to Mercedes. But I've been helping them. Like I was in a meeting with National Guard where we sold them on the idea of DIUX. But here's the best part. I deployed to Iraq as the XO of 270 CAT. So just get me back. Anyway, I want to help you all what you're doing. I speak the language of both sides. I really enjoy listening to all of this, and I really think I can help out because yeah. Well, let me know, and I'll shoot you a note and see if we can do some stuff together. Good to see you. Joseph, yeah. Good to see you. Nice to meet you. I enjoyed everything.
Hi, sir. I just wanted to say my name is Eric Graham. I'm here with Apps here. Yes. So have you're kind of investigating yet, or have you got the results yet? Yeah, it's technically a lot of what we're doing is but we haven't gotten to the AI piece yet because we have to actually get some training. But we applied for DIU solicitation to make another phase 2 rating materials. I was a swell so I know about PMS. Every Navy ship has like 40 binders this thick of just lists of maintenance, and the soldiers just do like rounds and mindlessly day and night, every day. So it's
we're 100%